All right, we are live here from Gillette Stadium, high above the practice fields, behind the facility. Alex Barth, Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles, Brian Hines. It is a Patriots beat, Patriots Daily crossover. We know you guys have been waiting. We want to keep these shows special, so it won't be each day at camp, but the plan is at the end of each block of practices, so the final practice before an off day is when we'll do that. The Patriots wrapped up their first block of practices a few hours ago here. They'll be off tomorrow, back on Sunday, so a chance here to collect. We'll talk a lot about, I want to make this collective the first 3 days, but really today was the big day. It was the most highlight-packed day, very involved day, longest practice, full 2 hours.
Shells for the first time.
Shells, that's right, little more physical, and it was a big day for both rookie quarterbacks, Drake May and Joe Milton, with notable moments today, but we'll start with Drake May. I described the first couple days for Drake May as up and down. It was up and down for everybody, just the way the offensive line has been, but it's kind of, there wasn't that much variance to it. It was a lot more steady, rolling hills kind of thing. This was a roller coaster. This was peaks and valleys today. We'll start with the high for Drake May, which was his throw of the day, his throw of camp so far. 45-yard slot fade to Jalen Polk. Just dropped it over to the defender, Azizi Hearn. Had about half a step on the defender. Polk goes down, makes the catch. Now, Jalen Hawkins was coming flying over the top. Maybe a hospital ball in a game, but you like seeing, and this has been my takeaway on Drake May through 3 days, you like seeing the competitiveness, the courage, the fearlessness. He's out here to compete. He is out here to win. He's not messing around. He's not playing it safe. He's not being careful. He is here to do what he can do. Mike, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on that throw and Drake May through 3 days.
Yeah, on the throw itself, the other thing I liked too was the humbleness after the fact. When he's talking, he said, it wasn't a great throw. I could have, got it there more. It was kind of, he admitted it was kind of a hospital ball. But no, I think you're right as far as it being a roller coaster type thing with him. Like, again, he's out here. There's times early on in practice he's shaky. He's kind of going too fast through his reads and then goes to, try and run the ball. And then you see towards the middle of practice, he makes a nice, free progression play and comes all the way back to the backside to, who was it, Jalen? No, it was Javon Baker on just like a hook route. And so he's actually, you see it, not only he's not only improving over the days, but he's improving literally throughout the course of practice. So, again, then you see too, the interception to Matthew Judon, which, isn't great. It's another one where he's going through his progressions. He just looks too fast and tries to dump
just trying to check the ball down.
Yeah, exactly. But again, overall, it's nothing spectacular, but I do like the aggressiveness, and I do like the fact that he's literally learning, not just, again, day to day, but throughout the day.
Yeah, I kind of nitpicked Drake May's throw to Jalen Reagor from earlier on in training camp, where it did seem like he kind of led him a little too far, which forced the one-handed catch. This one I didn't have as much of a problem with, the one to Jalen Polk, because he said he looked off the safety pre-snap. If you're going against cover one, that's the job. You look off the safety, then hit the sideline, because the safety shouldn't be able to get there. Nice range from Hawkins to make the throw, and I think that's why, kind of a results-based decision where he's like, I could have gotten my guy hurt, but that's football at the end of the day. Sometimes you got to take good hits, big hits, and Jalen Polk, credit to him for protecting himself. He could have waited for it to come to him. That would have been bad. That would have been a hospital ball where he got laid out. But he went up and caught it and then kind of tucked himself in, so if he did get hit, it wouldn't have been devastating. And also in the unspectacular that we've seen from Drake May, where he is going short a lot, I actually kind of like that from him, because Jacoby Brissett talked about it. The defense hasn't given them a whole lot of completions deep because there haven't been a ton of open windows, but we have seen Drake May get through his progressions very quickly, make the checkdowns, and find his outlet receivers when he needed to. The one time it bit him it kind of bit him was today with Matt Judon. Where
Say ass.
I've
said worse.
It's literally like
I don't know how you guys do it on Patriots Daily. On Patriots Beat, we can chop it in there here now.
I'll let Nat
It's not
slip
a
in this
stand-up. This isn't a legit.
Right, okay,
we
right.
can mess up. We can stutter. We can do all
Bit him in the ass. Anyway, but yeah, because you're.
Pat's beat.
Stephen A. Smith is here.
But yeah, wrap it up. You're not expecting Matt Judon to be in the flat covering a running back, and I think it just caught him off guard. Learning lesson, I think he mentioned it was a rookie mistake, as long as it doesn't pile up. And also, that was another thing I like that he mentioned was day-to-day and kind of building and not wanting to be a repeat offender, which Gerard Mayo said these young guys can't do. So overall, I've been impressed with Drake May, even if it hasn't been super spectacular.
All right, Brian, you were as excited for Drake May as anybody sitting up here.
He's wearing the Carolina blue, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's not quite, is that quite Carolina?
Oh,
you get that when you went down and saw his house the other day?
I did not know, but
Has he lived up to the hype through 3 days?
he has. I've been impressed, and I think the two plays we're talking about today are two reasons why we might be sitting here in a month and saying he's starting week one. The big play downfield to Jalen Polk, something we haven't seen from Jacoby Brissett, right? Like, he struggled pushing the ball downfield, maybe a little more consistent in the underneath areas, but he's struggling to capitalize and get the ball downfield, where if Drake May's hitting 1 or 2 of those every day in practice, that's something the coaching staff might consider and say, hey, the ceiling of this offense is, higher with Drake May under center. And then, he throws the interception, but he comes back, completes his next 4 passes. He bounced back really well. Jacoby Brissett even mentioned it in his presser. Like, he's really impressed with kind of his ability to bounce back like that, his mental toughness. So if he's starting right out of the gate or early on a team that might not be great, there's going to be some bumps and bruises early on, and you need that mindset to kind of bounce back. So I've been impressed with May, and I thought his day today kind of encapsulated why he could start even sooner than we expect.
So before we move on to the other quarterbacks, just real quick, better, worse, or the same, how do you feel about his chances to start week 1?
I think it's pretty much the same. I don't think much has changed. I still think this quarterback room is set up to be Jacoby Brissett week 1, and then sort of ease Drake May into the process. And again, you don't obviously, but Bailey Zappi isn't on the heels anymore. Joe Milton passes him the other day, and Joe Milton comes out here and probably has the best.
Yeah, we'll get to Joe. We'll get to
Bazooka Joe Milton and the orange thrower and Milton. But no, I do think it's the same. I think I just don't expect them to rush him into it. I think they've had this plan all along. Again, I don't think they're going to do it to them yet. There's too many moving parts. There's too much stuff going on along the offensive line. The receiver room's kind of up and down, back and forth. Kendrick Bourne's not here yet. So ultimately, I think it's pretty much the same for me.
Taylor.
I think the chances are actually better, and that's because, one, he's minimizing the mistakes. Like, yeah, he had the turnover where he had what would have been a pick 6. I think Jacoby Brissett's interception or near interception was worse because he threw to Jawan Bentley on a crosser where it kind of felt like he was overexerting himself. So, again, minimizing mistakes, but the big plays have been there for May, and they haven't been for Jacoby Brissett, and that's kind of the big difference maker for me. And you haven't seen Drake May make a ton of, pre-processing mistakes where, Jacoby Brissett mentioned there was only 1 pre-snap penalty. So it's not like he's so overwhelmed he can't make the calls or get everybody to the line. Like, things have looked like they've been relatively smooth. So because you're getting the big plays, the in-between seems like it's going relatively well, and you haven't had a lot of like, ooh, Drake kind of misses. I think he's got, slightly better chance.
Brian.
I'd go better too. I mean, I thought he could start since they drafted him.
That's true. Yeah, you don't count in this conversation.
But like, for the reasons Taylor just said, what I was talking about earlier, like the ceiling of the offense looks better. The competitive toughness is there. So I would still be surprised if he's starting week 1. Like, they clearly have made it seem they don't want to rush him into this. But I think through the first 3 days, like, if we're just looking at that, I'd probably start.
So question first. The only one of us that was down here for Mac Jones' rookie year was you, Alex.
Yeah.
The other 3 weren't here. Through 3 days of camp.
I was in the bleachers.
Oh, Brian. Okay, Brian was here. I'm sorry, Brian.
So respect on his name.
Yeah, he was watching the kickers and punters, though. But who looked better through 3 days of their rookie training camp, Drake May or Mac Jones?
Drake May, but it's a little apples and oranges.
Okay.
We're not seeing the ramp-up period, the slow ramp-up period they had with Bill Belichick. They had not had this much 11s work, and Mac Jones wasn't repping with the 1s.
Okay.
Mac, he had his moments, but it was with the 2s. It wasn't until really late in that camp that it even became a conversation because Cam Newton, again, there's extenuating circumstance here. Cam Newton gets popped for that COVID violation when he went to the doctor, whatever it was, and Mac lights up the Giants and joint practices. So it's a little different. So I'll say I feel better about Drake May starting. It actually has nothing to do with what's happening on the field. I'm going to go back to Tuesday. Gerard Mayo did not close the door on it, and you never expected him to fully do that, but it felt like a little more than just coach speak. I'm still like 15-20% he starts week 1, but I didn't think the door was going to be open at all, and it clearly is. Let's talk about the other quarterbacks real quick. We'll start with Joe Milton, because he had, I think, the throw of the day. And the pocket's closing in on him, as has been the case for most of these quarterbacks throughout practice. Pocket's closing in on him. He kind of starts to like back up to his left, like backpedal, but there's pressure coming in. He has to lean forward and like kind of
you could get up and demonstrate
parallel to the ground. No, don't feel like it. But he's almost like he kind of goes sidearm, but like leaning the opposite way. 65 yards. Javon Baker doesn't have to break off his route a ton. Now, credit to him, he did make an adjustment going up to get the ball, and he makes a great catch through contact with Marcellus Dial. And let's give Baker his credit, but just a physically impressive throw from Joe Milton, and then he comes out in 11s, and he has been repping in 11s more than Bailey Zappi. Zappi hasn't repped in 11s the last 2 days. Milton hasn't done a ton, but he's been out there, and I thought he made some, solid, reliable throws. He's not checking the ball underneath, but he's hitting throws in the middle of the field in that short to intermediate range. He's doing it, on a regular basis, and it's just a couple practices, and Drake May's still ahead of him. But anytime you see Joe Milton kind of picking things apart underneath, you pay some attention to that, because that's really what he hadn't been able to do in college. He's not pushing Drake May or Jacoby Brissett or anything like that.
Thank you.
But
I'm looking at the Sports Hub without the
We're waiting,
inside,
yeah.
and I just see B-roll of Joe Milton. I can see Jim Murray probably just saying, "Is Joe Milton on Drake May's heels?" and blah blah blah.
So he's not there. But that third quarterback battle, he's really starting to not even gain some ground. I think past Bailey Zappi, who almost got intercepted by Brendan Schooler today. Brian, I'll start with you on this one. Joe Milton.
I mean, he's been as advertised. The arm strength, you mentioned the throw today. Even one yesterday, like he was on the left hash. It was play action, so there was pressure right in his face, and he like flings a little back footer like out in the flat, but it's like all the way across the field. So, but sometimes it comes back and hurts him, like we saw in college and yesterday again. Like he fires a 10-yard fastball to Kayshon Boutte, and it goes right through his hand. So ball speed, ball placement, there's still some things that he'll have to kind of reel in, and that's where you get to he's not pushing one of these top guys.
Right.
But I think the physical tools, the arm strength, I mean, the throw to Baker today was absurd. So that's going to be enough, I would say, to beat out a guy like Bailey Zappi, where we kind of know what he is, and you're not expecting either of these guys to play this year, so keep the young guy with the physical tools.
Taylor.
Yeah, I'll say I wasn't like locked in on Joe Milton. I will say they were on different fields, so it's kind of hard to see. Like, because Drake May and Jacoby Brissett are on one field, and you got Zappi and Joe Milton. I'm kind of at the same place I've been with Joe Milton. I don't think he's really shown me anything different. Like, we knew he had the big arm. Like, Brian, you pretty much hit it on the head. He had the big arm. He can throw underneath. It's not like he's incapable, but
Right.
it is the ball speed. Like, things do matter because you're making life harder on your receivers, and the ball placement hasn't always been great from my perspective. Now Drake May needs to work on that as well, but one thing that Drake May has shown is like touch and the ability not just to not throw a fastball, but also to layer passes. And that's one thing when you talk about Joe Milton, it's processing and it's layering throws and making those kind of intermediate, not just I'm either going deeper, I'm going underneath. So for me, like, I don't think this should necessarily be a surprise that he's passing Bailey Zappi at this point. If anything, maybe you wanted Zappi to be better, and he isn't. But I think Joe Milton is what he is, and there's still a clear gap. Like, we're seeing it in the reps. Even with Gerard Mayo talking about it, you talked about with Drake May in the competition. He said Drake May is out there competing with Jacoby Brissett, but there's a distinction in the way he talks about those top two guys and the other two guys.
And you go back to touch, like that's the big difference. Brian mentioned the throw to Kayshon Boutte that just too fast, right? Too fast.
Yeah.
There's a similar route. And that was yesterday. Similar route today with Hunter Henry, and there's a linebacker kind of coming across, and what Milton did was try to basically beat that linebacker, get the ball past the linebacker, and in doing so, he got to pass the wide receiver too, where Drake May I don't want to say he lofted it. It was the right amount of zip. It wasn't you call it a two-seam fastball. It was a four-seam fastball. Took just a little bit off it and put it right to Hunter Henry. So that's the big difference, and it may not sound like it. It is. Mike, your thoughts on Joe Milton?
Yeah, I'll just add that we knew the arm strength was there. We knew the raw athletic ability is there with him, and we've seen it out here. I also think that he's making the right decisions. So, when guys have that rocket arm, they think they can just make every throw, and they know they can make every throw, and sometimes it bites them in the ass, and they turn the football over a little bit too much, where we haven't seen that from Milton. He hasn't tried to fit one in a crazy window and had a really bad interception happen yet. He's like, again, he's not honing in on the soft touch balls and things like that, but he's making the right decisions. Sometimes it's just a little bit too fast in the flat or something.
All right, before we move on, we should probably talk about the starting quarterback of the football team we cover. Taylor, what have you thought of Jacoby Brissett through 3 days?
I think he's been solid but unspectacular. Like, it's been similar to Drake May, but without the big throws. He's tried to push the ball downfield. In his defense, the receivers haven't really given him, like, clear windows necessarily. He had one overthrow, I think, today. There was another one to Jalen Reagor earlier in the practice I think just got broken up. So, the underneath stuff, like, he is consistent. The things that you want from Jacoby Brissett, going to be good in the quick game, not going to make a lot of really bad mistakes. He's had a couple throws that honestly did scare me, especially when he's rolling out. Sometimes he kind of has that, like, maybe take some dip off the chip because he's trying to force it in places he really shouldn't, and that's where, he did get intercepted the first day of training camp because John Jones broke it up just because he was there, and then Kyle Duggar was in the area and intercepted it. So maybe a little more ball security from Jacoby Brissett, if I'm being honest, and I'd like to see more of the downfield playmaking ability. But other than that, pretty much as advertised, nothing crazy.
I do wonder, before you guys go, if there's some of that Brian Hoyer approach from Jacoby Brissett. Like, I don't remember if you guys ever covered a Brian Hoyer training camp. Brian Hoyer did not care.
Blackout
And what I mean by that,
arm sleeve.
Brian Hoyer knew he's behind Tom Brady. He's not going to win the job, but he was like secure in being the backup. And even with Mac Jones, it's kind of the same thing. Where his kid's first round pick. I'm going to come out here and sling it. I'm going to come out here and have some fun. I'm going to test some windows. I'm going to try to make some, creative, unique throws, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. But there was no quarterback. I've never seen a quarterback more confident than training camp Brian Hoyer. So
Drake Maven said when he was speaking to the media, like, practice is to make mistakes.
Yeah, he's very clearly had that approach.
He kind of said something today along those lines where he's like, I'm out here to try stuff and see what I can, what I can push where and here. So he kind of seemed to have that kind of gunslinger mentality out there as well.
And as an older player, I think there's an element of, like, him wanting to know what he can do. Like, obviously started for the Browns until week 12. Last season, he only played in, like, a couple games and got hurt. So really, it could just be a level of, like, what can I do with the guys around me?
Yeah, on Brissett, I just think, you can tell that he's the most comfortable in the offense because he's done it before. I mean, you see him and Austin Hooper come out here together. Yeah. They're basically like the old statesmen of the offense because they did it for a couple years in Cleveland. The thing with Brissett that my big takeaway is off the field. I just think I really like his attitude, and I've kind of, I've harped on this for a long time with him, but I think he really is the perfect bridge quarterback for Drake May. I don't think Brissett would really care if they decided to start Drake May week 1. He said it today. After the play we talked about with Drake May on the deep ball to Jalen Polk, Brissett was the first guy out there to go congratulate the two of them who made the play, and he said it after
yesterday too.
Yeah,
one of them, I forget which one it was. I think it was the completion to Polk over the middle. Brissett ran right out there and dapped them up.
Yeah, it happened in the spring too.
Yeah, and so he said it after practice that he's not out, like, he doesn't want the competition to be like no animosity in the competition. He wants to root for these guys. He wants to bring these guys along. So I just think his attitude, the way he is, his knowledge of the offense, it's a perfect fit there. It's a perfect fit for what they want to do, even though they haven't, it hasn't really hit on all the bells and whistles haven't hit.
And I don't mean it to seem like, by the way, I'm tuning these guys out when I look at my phone. I'm looking at your comments, so I just want to make sure we got the sound right. It's weird not being in the little box on my computer. Look at actually here in person. Shake hands or something. We're actually
I don't have
here.
the chat anymore. My phone's too hot.
Yeah, we put Brian in the sun because he
my
needs
left side is going to be nice and tan over here. So
all right. Couple quick notes on the wide receivers. I want to keep this thing moving, but real quick, the speedsters. Jalen Reagor, Tyquan Thornton, good start. Reagor had a big day 1. Tyquan Thornton had a big day 2. I'm not taking the bait yet. The speedsters generally win when there's no pads on. Let me see what happens when you can hit those guys. Now, look, a good day is a good day. I'm not going to take that away from anybody, and it's better to have a good day right now than to not.
Yep.
But I still think Reagor's making the team. That has nothing to do with what happened on Wednesday. That has to do with special teams. We're still a long way away from either of those guys making a real push, in my mind. I don't know if you guys feel the same.
You'd rather have their days than someone like Juju Smith-Schuster.
So that was the other guy I wanted to ask about.
Who's been pretty
number 7.
non-existent out there. Like, even today, he slipped on one route. He had another pass that got broken up by Alex Austin. So it's been 2 quiet days. And again, we have to see it with Tyquan and Jalen Reagor when the pads come on. But you'd rather come out here and have a good day instead of just being, a ghost or non-existent out there.
You guys worried about Juju?
I don't think
I'm kind of off Juju, to be honest. I have been. The explosiveness is gone. You don't see it out here, and that's why part of why so many passes are getting broken up. He's just not creating any separation. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of been the story. I don't think we've expected much from Juju. He had that one solid opening day and was like, yeah, I'm 100%, and I'm calling cap. Because
when the first and second groups of receivers come out, it's guys like Jalen Reagor, KJ Osborne, Jalen Polk.
Jalen Polk's gotten a ton of run.
Polk's been awesome. I mean, Polk, Baker, those are going to be the main reasons why Juju doesn't make the team. And the fact that you mentioned Jalen Reagor, a guy who has special teams value, Juju doesn't bring that at all. Every time they're running special teams, at least in the spring, we haven't seen it in the summer so far, but Juju is basically working off on his own.
Remember, you talk about those guys who are ahead of him, and you're not wrong, but we also... Kendrick Bourne's not out here.
Right.
Pop's not running in team. He's dealing with a hand injury, according to Phil Perry. So there's even more guys ahead of him on the depth chart that we haven't seen.
And I actually think that has created a pretty interesting situation because Jalen Polk has capitalized on Demario Douglas being out. He's taking a lot of the top slot reps, lines up inside. Him and KJ Osborne have kind of been flexible. But when Pop comes back, what happens at that Z spot? Because KJ Osborne and Jacoby Brissett have very clear chemistry.
Yeah.
Like any of the off-schedule plays or any of the kind of wilder attempts from Brissett, it's KJ Osborne he's throwing to. But Jalen Polk has also been one of the top targets when he's been out there, and he's produced. And then we have Tyquan Thornton and Jalen Reagor. They are ex-players. I don't know if they're going to try Osborne or Jalen at that spot. But they have been two of like the most reliable guys with that top offense. So when Pop comes back in the lineup, what happens with that rotation? And maybe do we see guys line up in different spots?
All right, speaking of rotations and lining up at different spots.
I have one receiver thing before we move on.
Okay.
To it. What are they going to do with Juju? They just cut him, cut bait, and eat the money because he's in the
So-
second year of a 3-year, $33 million.
Maybe
deal?
this is a lazy take, but this has been my take.
Okay.
If they can trade Jonnu Smith, they can trade Juju Smith-Schuster.
I hope
That's
you're
fair.
right. I really
And
hope
like
you're right.
maybe you get a 7th, maybe it's a pick swap,
Brian
Juju and a
doesn't
7th for a 6th.
You mean like some of what it would take?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, if you want to keep him throughout camp and maybe, Kansas City loses a receiver
Yeah.
or something, that's probably your best bet. But, I mean, if other teams know, like, you're going to cut them, if you have 5, 6, 7 receivers ahead of them,
Right.
that could cost.
Look, they can eat the money. They have even
they can
after
do
today,
that's true.
I've been
40-something
saying
million.
Since,
Yeah.
like, March, like, part of having all this cap space and resources is you can get out of these contracts, and they still have $43 million. We'll see if the Jabril Peppers extension, which we can talk about in a bit, affects that, but they have plenty of money, and
Right.
they could eat some of it if they have to.
At least with Johnny, I will say, with him, I feel like everyone was talking about him being misused or not used enough.
Yeah,
With
that's true.
Juju, if someone does research and is like, oh, why is Juju on the trade block? They're going to see it's because he hasn't done anything.
Well, look, even
He's
if they
been
can't
hurt.
trade him, they can cut him. They
Yeah,
can afford
that's
to cut
what
him. They can
Robert
cut
is.
him.
Yeah, you
And
can eat the cap space.
they talked about playing the kids. Literally put your money where your mouth is. You can't have him out here taking snaps away from Jalen Polk and Javon Baker and even a guy like Pop Douglas. Like, you need those guys on the field. And if Juju's here, you're going to be compelled to play him because you're paying him. You want to just kind of stick him on the bench with the $11 million cap hit or whatever, fine. But whose roster spot is that taking?
Yeah, right.
We should ask Mayo, honestly, like, what do you see in Juju? Just to see, like, is it one of the generic answers or does he go in depth? Because I'm very curious because we've been out here and I don't really
We'll
know
see
why
Monday.
he's getting reps.
Because I assume he's not talking Sunday because they said every other practice. So
Right.
I think he's
We'll
on
see
the
Monday.
schedule.
is he on the schedule?
Mayo. I think he was on the
Maybe it's
schedule.
every other day. Maybe. All right, Taylor, you're up.
How are you going to get rid of Juju Smith-Schuster?
What's the plan?
So before Mike ruined my great
Yeah,
transition,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I did.
moving positions, swapping guys in and out. 3 days of tackle, no answers,
Nope.
none. They are trying everybody everywhere. We've seen Caden Wallace both sides, Chooks Okorafor both sides. We saw him on the back on the right side for the first time today. Vidarian Lowe has played both sides. Calvin Anderson has played both sides. I think Tyron Wheatley's only
Yeah.
played right. I don't think he's been a
Sounds
both
right.
sides guy.
Yeah.
They still have not moved Mike Onwenu off a guard, which part of me actually likes. I know I've been a Mike Onwenu as a tackle guy, but if you're going to do this, we're going to move all the pieces around constantly. Just turn it into a position battle at right tackle. I don't like Chooks Okorafor on the right side. And Taylor, you're probably going to roll your eyes.
No,
Oh,
I'm,
all right.
I'm the same way.
Well, because I've been the one saying play guys at the real
Look at
positions.
you
but
guys agreeing on the
Well,
offensive
but here's the
line.
thing.
It happens.
Here's the thing. If you move him to right, now what are you doing at left?
Yeah, right.
At least you have an in, and I don't know how he's going to work, but at least you had a guy over there consistently working at it, and they tried Caden Wallace over there, and I get that, but look, here's where I'm at with it, and feel free to disagree. I get these first couple days, they don't really know what they're going to do, and let's try as many combinations as possible to see if something clicks. But at some point, Dante Scarnecchia used to always talk about you want 5 guys who see it through the same pair of eyes. That's his saying, and basically what that means is everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what they're looking at, they're reading it the same way, everybody knows where everybody else is, and especially in a zone blocking scheme, that kind of chemistry is important. The only way you're going to build that chemistry and build that continuity is have the same 5 guys repping together consistently and not changing the group day after day. Now, non-padded practices, whatever.
Right.
I'm not going to evaluate offensive line play. You can't do a ton with offensive line play in non-padded practices. So experiment the first 3 days. They did. Experiment Sunday if you want. Monday when the pads come on, I would love to see them, analyze what you saw the first 4
Right.
days. Pick your 5, pick your tackle, right tackle or tackles. Give them a week. And maybe it looks ugly, but give them a week. And if there's no growth through the first week, then maybe you change it
Yeah.
again. But at a certain point, you got to actually have a consistent group out there.
We talked about it when we did our stand-ups after practice, where right now, you're right, you can't glean much from the non-padded practices, but they can go back at the film and look at fundamentals and look at, are you going to the right place? Are you guys communicating properly? they can go to those guys and ask, what have you guys seen from each other that, what they're not going to ask David Andrews to put the starting 5 out there, but, try and figure out what the best combination is. And Alex, I agree with you. Once the pads do come on, put 5 out there and don't mix it up again. Don't flip Caden Wallace back and forth. Don't put Chooks back on the right side. Like, if Okorafor is going to be your left tackle, let him be your left tackle.
Let him work
Let
there.
him see it. Because, again, he played right tackle for so long with Pittsburgh. Let him see what the left side looks like for an extended period of time instead of just flipping him back to where he was used to. On Mike Onwenu, we've done it too with our stand-ups, Taylor, and all of our other videos on CLNS and Patriots Press Pass. But I think we're okay now with the fact that he's going to be their right guard and he's going to stay there. Now they have consistency down the middle. It's Andrews, it's Onwenu. Figure out the bookends and go from there. So,
Although, I will add to that, if that's working,
yeah,
and we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but if that's working, I don't want to see them mix it up when Cole Strange comes back. That's the thing.
No,
if you're going to keep So and Onwenu and those are your tackles, as long as it's good, those are your tackles.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to see Cole Strange shoehorned in there in week 8 when, hey, look, the offensive line is actually making some.
I think they're smarter than that
but
too. I think they realize that they're missing so much time.
Before we get to October, Taylor, your thoughts on the tackles through the first 3 days and looking ahead.
Yeah, I definitely don't like Caden. I don't like Calvin. Oh my God, there's so many names.
Caden, Calvin,
I don't like
Chooks, but that's a C too.
Literally, it's tough. I don't like Chooks Okorafor on the right side, especially because he's not a great run blocker. I think if anything, he's a little more finesse than really power. Hopefully that changes this year, but I think that's a better fit on the left side where I expect a lot of the zone stuff to go. I think the right side with Onwenu was going to be more gap and more power and downhill. I like Caden Wallace and Mike Onwenu. Like, that's a combination this season that I think could really work. Plus, I just like Chooks Okorafor being a guy, like, if someone's got to transition, let it be the guy who has played left tackle, and he even said that, like, I was pretty successful at left tackle in college. I can move back. After he kind of made it seem like it was might have been a tough adjustment in the spring, he kind of did a 180.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
I wonder if somebody said something to him about that. But you're right, and let it be the veteran.
Yeah,
let it be the veteran. Let it be the guy that's not just acclimating to life in the NFL to begin with in Caden Wallace. And it leaves you Calvin Anderson, who is a true swing tackle, as your third tackle, and he can back up both spots. Brian.
I'm just kind of with you. Like, if you want to take these non-padded sessions to tinker with stuff, try to find maybe your best 5, but there's got to be a point where you pick 5 and just see what they have. And I think the first padded practice, which should be Monday, is a good starting point to do that. Because, you mentioned Scar's philosophy. These guys, even talking to them, have said it themselves. Like Chooks Okorafor was saying, I need to learn how City So plays, and he has to learn how I play. And now today, like, he's flipped over playing next to Mike Onwenu. So these guys, they need the time to learn how to play off each other. Again, especially in the zone blocking scheme where reps are so important. So at some point, you gotta pick 5 here and just roll with it and see what you got.
All right. I want to get to one more thing on the offense real quick, but first, let's hear from our friends at Game Time.
Dog days of summer here in Boston, which means it's time to get to some games over at Fenway Park. This baseball season, I'm using Game Time to land my Red Sox tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which means getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's super easy. You just open the app, click Sports, and the games will be right there for you. Right now, you can get tickets to the Rollin' Red Sox for as low as $11. You can even buy parking for the game and check out your seat view right in the app. With Game Time, you can save up to 60% by buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy shows, theaters, and more. Get the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It's the dog days of summer here in Boston, which means it's time to get to some games over at Fenway Park.
All right. It
This
means we're
baseball
back,
season,
Brian. Welcome to live broadcast production.
Do a 3-2-1, not a sideways.
All right. Anyway, as Brian goes through live broadcast 101, this is what me and Evan used to do.
How far away do you go?
Is this?
this?
None of us are doing it, but shout out to Miss Janosko, Sharon High School. This is what me and Evan used to do. It wasn't live. It was live actually on game days, me, Evan, and Trags, but I set it all up. Amit's doing a much better job than Ira did.
Did you guys ever have a tri-camera setup?
No, it's just the one camera. I set it up. I told Evan, do not move, because I can't move it if we sway. And we do 10, 15 minutes just standing here. So it's taking me back a little bit.
We're out on the stools outside, and we set up, and Amit's doing his thing, and then I moved to get out of the way. He goes, "What are you doing?
No, you
Put the
can't
stool back.
move. You
Put the
can't
stool
move."
back.
Unprofessional
Yeah,
TV.
I'm sorry.
Anyway. Brian, I'll start with you. Before we move on to the defense, any last thoughts on the offense from you guys?
Maybe just some depth positional battles. Like your guy Mitchell Wilcox, still pretty involved. If we want a third, fourth
Vigilante Tavai,
tight end,
2024.
and then Antonio Gibson's out, and like that third running back we've talked a lot about, like who's going to step up behind Stevenson and Gibson. It's been a lot of Kevin Harris. Spelling Ramondre, even sharing the field with Ramondre, and Jermichael Hasty has kind of worked on the other field. So just some depth positional battles to watch as camp goes on here. I'd say Mitchell Wilcox and Kevin Harris are two guys kind of taking early leads there.
I almost kind of wonder if Kevin Harris was in Bill's doghouse or something, because like even when he played well, and then he would disappear. It wasn't
Did he ever
great.
fumble in the preseason or something?
I think he did. Oh, didn't he in that Raiders game? Somebody fumbled in that Raiders game, and we were like, it was him or Pierre Strong, because they're both rookies. And I remember thinking, great, here we go. But so you like what you've seen from Kevin Harris, Mike?
Harris, that one play on 11-on-11 where he just burst up the middle, he looked as fast as I've ever seen him. We think of him as like this bowling ball running back, just another 1 yard line type of guy, but he flew through the middle of the field. We talked about Jalen Polk already, but he's my guy. He's my not dark horse, but somebody who's going to come in here and be like an 1,000-yard receiver almost immediately. He looks awesome. The quarterbacks trust him a lot early on. He's in that first group right away. So I'm excited to see what he looks like when the pads come on, because, Brian, when you came on the show with us yesterday, we had mentioned how he's sort of not a blocking receiver exclusively, but someone who can get after it when the pads come on. So I'm even more excited to see what happens.
And he had his over-the-top, physical
catch
today, which we were exactly talking about. And Kevin Harris, he had a fumbled loss in the 2022 preseason. Doesn't say
what it was.
Doesn't say what game it is, but
it was the Raiders game. It was his rookie year. I remember that. I remember that. So, but with Harris, the good thing for him, and I wrote this today on 98.5thesportsup.com.
Good plug.
Thank
you.
You pay attention, learn a thing or two. Yeah. The best is ahead for him. That's a guy that's supposed to shine when the pads come on and he can hit. So great start to camp for Kevin Harris. Mitchell Wilcox has been out there a ton. I'll take my victory lap on that too. One I will say, I'd been big on Jaheim Bell. A rough start for Jaheim Bell. He had couldn't get lined up the first day, got pulled out of the drill, had a bad drop yesterday. Did make a nice catch behind his body today.
You can see the physical skills, the physical skills and the tools, but it just hasn't been as consistent.
I think you talked to Gerard Mayo today as well.
He's playing catch up a little bit. Yeah, that's what it feels like. So
one other note for the offense. You mentioned Kevin Harris and that hole that he had. The outside zone blocking scheme now, huge grain of salt, because they're not wearing pads, and I'm the first one who's like, what happens in the trenches without pads doesn't really matter. They are opening bigger holes in the outside run game than I expected. I thought this was going to be a kind of a rough transition, and we've seen some significant gaps that these guys have been exploiting. Ramondre Stevenson, I feel like over the past week, has had 3 or 4 big runs. Again, when pads come on, we'll see what this really looks like, but just something at this stage, I was impressed by the progress it seems like they're making.
You weren't here, and
I was just going to say, it looks better than when they tried it 2 years ago.
That was, we weren't really sure what they were doing at times.
It's amazing what happens when you have someone who's coached the thing you're trying to install.
Instead of reverse engineering. All right, so that's the offense. On the defense, honestly, not a ton to report defensively through the first 3 days, and I mean that in a very good way. This is a unit that was good last year. They brought everybody back. I know we were wondering maybe stylistically how different it would look without Bill Belichick, and it's early, but no sweeping changes. Now, I assume there'll be some new wrinkles. I think that might be something we see behind closed doors, or we don't see behind closed doors right after we're out of here, but all's good. All's good on the defense. Matthew Judon's been a menace. Again, asterisk without pads, but Judon's been a menace. Godshaw's been a menace. Keon White's been great. And you're seeing that battle in the secondary heat up as well. I mean, we can start there. I thought Christian Gonzalez had one of the best days any players had of camp the 3 days today. He was step for step with every receiver he covered. They were picking on him a little bit yesterday underneath. Now, there's certain things just as a corner you have to give up, and I don't think he did anything wrong.
I agree.
Yeah.
But it clearly lit a fire. Because he came out today determined. Alex Austin had a good day today. We've seen more from Isaiah Bolden. That cornerback group's been advertised. That's just a couple thoughts off the top of my head on defense. Taylor, I don't know if you have a big defensive take from the first few days?
I want to give Marcus Jones some love.
Yeah, he's actually been really good. That's a
Yeah,
good
I
point.
think he's had at least 2 breakups this week. It really seems like he is the go-to guy when they go in their 3 cornerback looks in the slot, which we've seen him outside, inside. I remember last summer we were like, why is he on the outside so much? Like, the depth is pretty good. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Now he's actually gotten to play in the spot where he is the best suited, and he has looked very good. I can't remember any plays where I was like, yeah, that wasn't great from him. So, strong start for Marcus Jones, who really needed to make a statement, I feel like, this summer.
Mike?
My big picture on the defense, I wrote about it this morning on CLNSmedia.com.
There you go.
Like that.
There you go.
My first camp conversations about. There's a bunch of like first world problems on the defense right now, like the Judon contract, the Gottschalk contract. Barmore's hurt, or Barmore's sick. Mapu's hurt. We were kind of confused about the cornerback situation. Alex Austin. Is it Alex Austin? Is it John Jones? Is it Marcus Jones? It doesn't matter. They're all really good, and this defense is going to be good. Why are you smirking?
No, you made the point where I can hear Amit.
I thought
Listening back to the show. No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
Stupid. Okay, good. No, yeah, a ton of first world problems and like a bunch of random weird moving parts. But at the end of the day, they're all so good. Tavai in the middle, Bentley in the middle. Like it's just a good unit, and that's another part of that's another reason why the offense hasn't looked that good. Yeah. Is because their defense is just one of the best in football, and it's going to be hard for them to really break through.
Brian?
Yeah, I was with you with Marcus Jones. Like he was someone coming into the summer I wasn't like as hyped up for. Just want to kind of maybe temper some expectations, but he's been out here and he's been awesome. And if that frees up, Jonathan Jones to play more of the boundary or just gives you another chess piece in that secondary, that's going to be such a big boost there. And I guess one of the guys I've been more disappointed in, and this is someone where we've been trying to just find a spot for him, was Marte Mapu.
Yeah.
And then
I wanted to talk about that.
Okay, like Sion Taki's out with the knee injury. So now maybe is the chance for Marte Mapu to get in there and carve out a role, and for the coaches to say, okay, we can't take this guy off the field, even if Taki's out there. And he's been limited throughout the first 3 days. He came out there late today, but didn't even practice. So, like, there was a chance for him to take advantage of some of that opportunity, and now he's hurt, and he can't even get out there.
And I got excited because Gerard Mayo said, I don't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, it was like, we don't know if he's a linebacker or safety. We're going to figure it out. And he did say we'll figure it out when the pads come on, and that makes sense. But there's reps to be won at linebacker, certainly. And at safety, this has been one of my sneaky takeaways. Brendan Schooler's been playing a lot of safety. Now, a lot of it's been with the second and third team, but he's been out there. Yeah. And post Bill Belichick, these are the kind of questions we're going to ask. Are they still going to keep these special teams specific players? How many will they keep? And is this a case of them going to Schooler going to them or something? And just like, he's going to play more safety now because it's a new era. And I think he's gotten as many reps as he has because Marte Mapu isn't out here. But I don't think that that's entirely it. And the reps he has gotten, he's made the most. They picked off Bailey Zappi today. He undercut a route in the flat to the Michael Petway and got there like half a second late, got one hand on it, knocked it down. Defense lit up. Like everybody on that side of the field was hyped for him. I don't want to say Marte Mapu's not going to have a job to come back to when he's healthy. I'm sure they'll work him in, but Brendan Schooler's proving he can play that position a little bit, even if it's just in an emergency role. But that's where Mapu played it last year, in an emergency role. So he might have to play some linebacker. They're going to have to figure something out with him. But like Brian said, it's a great point. There was an opportunity for him here at the start of camp, and I don't want to knock a guy for being hurt, but you can't make the club from the tub. And that's just where he's at right now.
And there's also the fact that Jalen Hawkins is establishing himself as a guy who is consistently the third safety when they go in their 3 safety packages, which was surprising because that was Marte Mapu's job from day one last season. And even when he was healthy, we were seeing Jalen Hawkins was more involved in the backfield than he was. Now, to be fair, when we're watching, I don't think Jalen Hawkins has stood out for anybody, at least not that I've noticed.
I mean, the catch today from Polk, he showed some impressive range.
Right, absolutely, yeah. But outside, that was one where it's kind of hard to judge because he did seem to pull up a little bit. But still, Jabril Peppers told us either yesterday or 2 days ago that he won the spring practice player, like had the most points for the defense because of his effort, his versatility. And these are things that you did see when he was with the Falcons. But what worried me was the tackling consistency. He's not the biggest guy. So, like, if it's a running back or a tight end or, like, a really strong receiver, those guys can stiff arm him. But still, we've seen, like, with Jalen Mills, really inconsistent when he was in Philly, came here and was one of their more consistent players, especially once he moved to safety. So, Jalen Hawkins, probably the biggest dark horse on this defense, is someone who we kind of thought was an afterthought. Maybe he's a special teamer, but no, I think he's really going to have a role.
Staying at the safety position, Jabril Peppers signs a 3-year contract extension. This one is $24 million, right, up to 30. I love this. It's no secret how I feel about Jabril Peppers. I think he's one of the best players of the team. He's a leader. He's a building block player, a guy you can build around. I was saying last year, move on from Duggar, give Peppers more opportunity. Now they both of them. They didn't pay him a ton of money yet, but the safety contract. Yeah. Hey, dropped out. All right, I saw this. Yeah. Still live. Press slow. Can you hear us now?
We're back.
Oh, we're back.
Are we back?
Are we back?
And we're all on our phones and we're back.
This light's still out.
All right.
Thumbs
So-
up. We're back.
We're back. Hey, you're winning. All right, I don't know. I don't know. Live broadcast, folks. Dead? Doing a media scrum here. All right.
Four Stooges out here.
Am I back now or no? All right. Can people hear me? Can people hear me? Okay. All right. Let's get this thing wrapped up. If what were we talking about? Jabril Peppers' contract. He's getting $8 million. Peppers is getting
Duggar's getting
14 and a half. It just feels like a really good deal. Do you guys have any thoughts on the contract? Mike, you were kind of giving yours.
Yeah, he's a leader, and we talked about it earlier on the field a little bit, where after the incident with the Giants game last year, when he was in the when we scrummed him like we just did you, and he took he took accountability for the comment he made with to Saquon Barkley. He's just a like you said, a building block, a guy who wants to be around here. I think he might have even taken a little less than he's worth. He could have probably got more on the market, and he's getting $8 million a pop. Like, I love it. I think it's a great signing. I don't see any. I have no qualms about it.
Yeah, and when it comes to like Jabril Peppers versus Kyle Duggar, I think Duggar gets more because he is more versatile. He can be a true linebacker, true slot corner, true deep safety, whatever. Peppers, I think he's more like slot and linebacker early on, and then you want him in the backfield with that range and everything, in those other downs or in passing situations. But I loved it. I had Jabril Peppers and Matthew Judon as my top extension candidates after Ramondre Stevenson signed his. But Peppers is a guy I wanted around for a while, and he's only like half a year older than Duggar. It's not like they're really far away. So you guys mentioned leadership, the vocal element and all that. I'm super psyched about it. It was a good deal.
Brian, you surprised this got done before Godshaw or Judon?
No, because I think it's a simpler extension to kind of hammer out the details on, right? Like Judon, we've talked about it. It's complicated. He's 32. He's coming off an injury. Godshaw, he's almost 30, and like he's a run-stuffing, defensive tackle. And are they changing their aggressiveness up front where like that personnel might not be needed? So I think this was more of a simpler negotiation where like, okay, he's a really big part of our defense. You saw him a year removed from the ACL, that step he took. Like, I think this was just kind of easier to get done. And I always go back to, you went to the, the quotes in the locker room, that video after the Bills game that the team posted where he stepped up ahead of Matthew Slater and addressed the team, addressed the locker room. Like, he's a leader. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a captain. Sure. So I think this was a good deal to get done, and a little easier than those two guys.
It was funny too. Last year during camp, there were like 2 or 3 news breaks where we would talk to Belichick, and then he would leave the podium, and the second he walked away, we'd get a notification that someone signed. It was the opposite today, where we got the Field Yates notification that they were signing, and then Mayo could come out and actually talk about it.
Confirmed it, and he did talk about it.
Confirmed it. I'm the head coach. I'm allowed to do this.
Yeah.
So Peppers back, 3-year deal. Before we wrap it up here, last thing, we finally got a special teams period today. It was the final period of day 3. Live field goal reps, 4 for each kicker. From between, it's tough to tell the exact yardage from where we're standing, 30 to 40 yard range, something like that. 4 makes, Chad Ryland 4 for 4, Joey Sly 3 for 4, missed from call it 37, wide to the right by foot and a half. Early advantage Ryland in this kicker battle, but
Chad's
Brian,
back.
we'll start with you.
We'll start and end with Brian Hines.
We got a ways to go here.
Oh yeah, we got a long way. But I mean, we're not doing Taekwondo. We might as well do Chad Ryland.
Yeah.
Again, right? So I mean, 4 for 4, he's right there. But yeah, it's a long way to go. We'll have a joint practice, preseason games. We'll still keep an eye on kickers around the league, and that might have got complicated today.
Yeah.
Michael Badgley, the Detroit Lions, are one of 2 teams who had 2 kickers. He tore a hamstring, so they're down to 1. So, I mean, it was a good start for him. He made all of his kicks, but a long way to go here.
Would you rather Michael Badgley with a torn hamstring or Chad Ryland?
Chad Riley.
Chad Ryland, he's going 4 for 4.
He was good today. We'll see what happens when the pads come on, but you're right. It was a step in the right direction for him.
Yeah, I've been pretty tough on Chad Ryland. Like, he had a shank yesterday, at least one, and I was really worried, especially because the spring he had some misses, and even the makes weren't great, but I really thought this was a really great bounce back day for him. But the question is, can he continue this performance when the pads come on?
Yeah, it's got to get the pads on for the case. Well, so in all honesty, with the lack of special teams periods, like punt coverage, the kickoff stuff, there's contact in that. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Some people are surprised there hasn't been the special teams work. You can save that for when the pads come on. I'm good with that. You're outside of field goals. That's the one thing. Yep. You're not going to get a ton out of that before the pads come on. Speaking of which, so like I said at the beginning, we're going to do one of these shows after, at the end of each block of practices. What are you looking for coming up next week, and especially when the pads come on? Taylor, we'll start with you.
I want to see if Drake May can continue this performance. I want to see if, like he said, the mistakes don't repeat themselves, if the processing continues to improve, if the decision-making is still solid, and if we see more of the arm. I'm at the point where it's like, all right, I got a little bit of Drake May going deep. I want some more.
Let's take the driver out of the bag.
Yeah, but that's the most important thing for this team, I think, is Drake May making a legitimate push to start, so that's what I'm looking for.
I don't know what's in the forecast for like a roster move and someone to bring in, but I honestly wonder how much longer Bailey Zappi's going to be here. I don't know if they make the move this soon, but with reps being limited, with more competitive periods coming up with pads on, Zappi barely saw any 11-on-11 reps today. What's the point in keeping him here if he's not going to even play? So we'll see what happens there.
Well, it's obviously, Drake May. How does he handle a live rush? We've talked so much about the footwork, which I've kind of rolled my eyes at the whole draft cycle. But he'll have a live rush. How does he handle it? But with the pads come on, it's the offensive line. What's the starting five going to look like? Who's at right tackle? Now that they can actually, hit these guys and get some contact, are they going to hold up? Or are we still going to see guys rushing through and being in Jacoby Brissett's face as he turns around? So offensive line is probably the big thing with the pads.
So definitely offensive line for me, but also defensive front.
Yeah.
Devon Godshaw wants to get paid. Matthew Judon wants to get paid. They're out here. Let's see it. Keon White, year 2 jump. That would be massive for this team. He had a good spring, but let's see him again when they can hit. And Gerard Mayo said we might see some live tackling drills too. So just to hold, not just the offensive line, the defensive line too. It feels like polar opposites, but there are, like you called it, first world problems. There are interesting things going on up front. So that will do it. I think, right? Everything's still together. The equipment hasn't burned down. We made it to the end.
Does Amit have any takes to end us with?
No, he's shaking his head. All right. So we've got tomorrow's an off day. I'm sure there'll be coverage. PatsPulpit.com, CLNSmedia.com, 98.5thesportshub.com. Pats Daily. Are you guys doing a show tomorrow? Are you off tomorrow?
We're off tomorrow. We'll be back Sunday.
Off tomorrow. So they'll be back Sunday with practice. Patriots beat. We'll be back Sunday with practice through the week next week. And then the next crossover episode with their
Tuesday?
So
Tuesday,
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday,
and then they're off on Wednesday, so we'll be back with another crossover on Tuesday. Hopefully we get full sound through that show. We'll see how much we can learn between now and then. So until the next one, for Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles, Brian Hines, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy your off day, everybody.